camera is on.
Welcome to Nights at the Round Table, a round table discussion on speculative fiction books and film. Hi everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Nights at the Round Table. Today we are discussing the post-apocalyptic film Snowpiercer, and I'm sitting here with Lindsay and with Eric, the podcast listeners, and I'm going to start with general impressions of the movie. I'll start with you, Lindsay. You haven't been here in a while.
Yeah, so story time. Yesterday I was having a great day. It was a fantastic day. Lots of dancing, lots of just really, really good mood. And then I had to watch this movie. So I put it off as long as possible. And then I sat down and watched it. During the first half, I actually was cutting out a pattern for a cosplay, Keith from Voltron. And it managed to somewhat pull my attention away from cutting out, which was good, mostly because I had a hard time hearing. I found the levels were not mixed great, so lots of loudness with the fighting, so I turned the volume down for my neighbors, and then couldn't hear the dialogue. But overall impression was very sad, depressing, and not a good time. Ruined my mood.
I'm sorry, Christian. Eric?
My wife was asleep when I watched the first half, so I had the subtitles on.
Oh, nice.
Subtitles added a lot. It let me know which languages were being spoken.
Oh, cool.
So speaking in Korean, speaking in Japanese, which is cool. First impression of this movie was, so when is it starting? And then the next impression was, wait, did I just watch The Hunger Games, but with no interesting dialogue? Overall, the movie was confused. Not confusing. It was so plain and obvious. I thought it was a video game movie, but it's not. It's an adaptation of a graphic novel.
So in contrast to these two, I love this film. I really genuinely do. I think it's beautifully acted. I think there's enough bizarreness that it borders on the absurd, but not the ha 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 kind of absurd, the kind of that's really creepy absurd. And everybody knows by now that I like my stories a little gritty and dark and depressing, but to be honest, I found the ending of this movie actually hopeful. So yeah. I enjoyed this movie an awful lot. And it's not just my fondness for Chris Evans.
He was a lot of fun to look at.
And he's a good actor.
Yes. Oh no. You cannot fault the cinematography. Mm-hmm. The color coding of the whole movie was gorgeous. The concept was fantastic, and the acting. There were 2 Academy Award winners and 2 Academy Award nominees, and they were amazing. But the story was confused. It didn't know if it wanted to be a YA post-apocalyptic movie or if it wanted to be gangs of New York on a train. Did it want to be hopeful or did it want to be not hopeful? And there were so many plot threads that were useless or that you could only get as an in-joke if you really know your shit. Like the fish. Like, what the fuck was with the fish? Turns out it was a reference to The Godfather.
Oh!
Which is great as, hey, the director loves The Godfather.
Oh, I thought it was just, demonstrating, look how sharp our blades are.
I was also thinking, it was just more of that bizarre sort of off-putting absurdity.
Which makes complete sense if you're in a fishing village. But they had to go get the fish that they're only allowed to eat twice a year from the front carriages, bring it all the way back, and slice. You know what would have worked better? One of their friends that they kidnapped at some point. Just say, hey, squeak, come on. Or maybe if it had been a puffer fish, that would have been extra cool. Because then the
not only
the
are we going
poison.
to injure you, we're going to give you hallucinations.
So, but it's just like, look, I'm going to waste some food. That's
To be fair,
food in this movie was the stupidest thing ever. No, not the food itself, but the reaction to food.
oh, so the only thing about this movie that I was like, wait, what? Was the reaction to what the protein bars were made out of.
I was like, where did it all come from?
I mean,
Well, they're bugs. They have a grass area, so I assume they have a... Like, you can build...
and they breed super quick.
You can breed in, like, a little tank, bugs.
Yeah.
And in this situation, it makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who's like, oh, bugs...
Ew, yeah, I'm like, but it beats eating people, guys. Like,
Yeah.
the fuck?
Actually,
Wait.
from the sounds of it, it doesn't.
Well, yeah, babies are the best
Oh,
taste.
That whole scene.
You know,
oh.
Chris Evans is too good at playing a good guy. You want to like him. You want him to succeed. But in this movie, if you go by dialogue and actions, he's a bastard.
Yeah,
a
yeah.
useless, stupid, manipulated idiot.
Okay, so
He makes Frodo look like Frodo's a genius.
yes, he was manipulated, but in that situation, I can totally imagine myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? You
Being-
can imagine yourself at 17 going around eating babies? And what changes your mind is an old man chopping off his arm?
Have you ever been so hungry
Yes.
that you can't sleep?
Yes.
Okay, so imagine.
I have gotten to that point before.
So imagine people do crazy shit when they're hungry.
I can understand eating people. I can understand that. And I can even understand going towards eating a baby and getting surprised with the arm thing. But the way he described it, he had eaten multiple babies and enjoyed it. But just the watching of the old man chop his arm off was enough to make him go, wait, there is good in the world. Maybe I should change my ways and not eat the baby. Religion. No, bull fucking shit.
No, see-
You know what he would have done? He would have been like, chopped off his arm. Great. You guys eat that. Baby. He's crossed the line where he
doesn't
is
mean- no.
willing to, with other sources of food, other humans, to go out of the way to eat babies specifically because they taste better. He's going to eat an old, gnarled man,
But
even though there's regenerative powers in the doctor.
So just because you've crossed a line doesn't mean that you can't cross back. That
No,
was
it
the
takes
whole
more.
arc.
No, there was no arc.
There was.
There was no arc whatsoever. He was a bastard at the beginning.
Yes.
He was a dumbass bastard at the end.
No, right at the
He
end.
was guilty.
Yes.
Blamed everything on Wilson. Kept
Yes.
blaming everything on Wilson. And
Yes.
then the movie told you it was Wilson's fault. Which is fucking bullshit. If you're eating babies, it is your fault. Don't blame anybody else.
Okay, yes, I get it. It's a horrific history, but the whole point is he took that horrific history, started a redemption arc. Before
When?
you
When
met
did he
him,
start a redemption arc?
Before
He
you
started
met
and
him-
finished it
Would
before
you let me finish? Before you met him, he started, and then by the end of the movie, it was complete, in which he sacrificed himself to save a child, and then to save the girl and the child. That was the arc.
That wasn't... Okay.
It's-
I'll agree to disagree.
Yeah.
It was pretty much him doing exactly what he did the entire movie, which was feel guilty and try to sacrifice himself. Every time the train opened and there was a new villain, he threw himself in the way and stormtroopers missed him. He should have been killed right away in that first train car with the axes. He ran right forward and suddenly became Captain America, a guy who has been eating nothing but a few protein bars, one protein bar a day. Suddenly he's like, phoom, phoom, phoom. Hey, look, an axe, phoom. Hey, oh wait, a fish. Aha, kill you. Like, what the fuck? This movie tries to be hyper realistic in its violence and its humans suck. But then throws in superpowers like his fighting. What was he training with an axe for years?
Okay, no, but an axe is the extension of the arm, and if you know how to fight, which you would if you were in the back row. Why?
The
Because
only
people were fighting.
with each other? You never see them fighting with each other.
No, but that's explained before that. That was before what's his
18
face.
years ago?
Yes.
I was in way better shape 18 years ago and I haven't fought since.
Yeah, but you don't live in a place where it might be necessary, where people might be training for this, where there have been uprisings in the past that have failed, that people want to get to the front of the bus, so they're going to keep themselves in shape and ready.
It still has it's very impressive for someone who has never seen a weapon of that sort, because they have no knives, they have no swords.
They clearly have knives. How did they chop their limbs off?
Good point. They must have had knives. Alright. It's not logical that you would expect him to be able to fight or to snipe with a gun.
Okay, sniping with the Uzi was a little bit much. But
Or for what was this with superpowers?
what superpowers?
She was telepathic,
Oh.
which had no plot consequences at all.
Yes, it did.
Every time she warned them, it was null and void. Oh, don't open that door.
Paid off at the end.
How?
Because she recognized the kid. She was standing
found the
on the
kid.
kid. She found the kid. And that snapped him out of his,
Yeah.
I'm going to take over the trainers and be like, no, fuck this shit.
That is the worst Xanatos gambit ever. I am going to pick out my nemesis on the back of the train. He is going to redeem this cannibalistic baby eater. And then, by making him have redeemable qualities, be happy, and turn him into someone who wants justice, I will make him take my place as the guy who puts all the people in the back under his heel. For fun.
Okay, so for starters, they were friends, not nemesis, until right at the end, because Chris Evans' character, Curtis, went further than anyone expected, and because people from the front of the bus...
But he said
train
that
died.
Chris Evans was being trained. You've been groomed to take my place.
That was part of the
Why would you
manipulation.
groom someone by giving them a person, a wise mentor, Gandalf? We'll get to the Lord of the Rings ripoff in a moment. And then train him to be moral, to have respect for people, children, adults, everyone, and then have him replace you. The amoral, jackass who sees women and children as not being people.
Yeah,
he
was
says
a dick.
it. He says it. He says you are the only person who has walked this whole train, when there are at least 2 kids and his assistant, Bond villain girl, who has done the entire train.
I missed that.
So,
Like, oh, damn it!
he sees them
Even
as
more of an asshole now!
objects to the point where he's like, you haven't been laid in a while, and points to his girl. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, first off, what? This is the worst villain ever. Who comes up with a plan of, I'm going to make him a good guy, and then he can take over the train? Where I think of people as parts.
Maybe that was the test, though. Making it to the front of the train means you're good enough to... And also, let's not forget his history. Like, you can appeal to that awful history in order to break somebody down.
But he manipulated him. That guy's 18 years. He built him the way he is.
No, he didn't.
Sorry,
He tried,
Hurt
but
did
couldn't.
it.
No, but he tried, but couldn't.
But
that was part
Hurt-
of his guilt. And then in the end, that's part of the redemption, because he ends up losing the arm to save a kid anyway. Bookends.
Yes, it was nice and cheesy.
I enjoyed it. Okay, so let's talk about the ending. Lindsay had some thoughts.
I did have thoughts. I know it was supposed to be like hopeful, 2 people survive, but I was like, all of humanity is resting on the shoulders of a 5-year-old and a 17-year-old, and there's polar bears.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, well, there they go. They're dead.
They're dead. See, I read that differently, because if polar bears survived, then that means not all species died, which means it's very likely humans, who are like cockroaches, probably have some survivors out there.
That's what I took out of it, because polar bears are nearly extinct now, so if they manage to survive, then a lot of other things probably survive.
Yeah.
And basically, when they got out of the train, my first thought was, well, they're fucked. I mean, there's no animals.
Yeah.
There's no ecosystem. Sure, everything's melting, but
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
plane, I could only see part of it before. Unfortunately, the father, I know it's melting because the plane! And I'm like, there are still tornadoes and weather patterns. The plane could have just been brushed off by a very large storm.
Oh, if it's packed ice, no, not really.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how this magic stuff works.
And there was also the melt on the railroad.
Yes, there was a melt on the
glacier
railroad,
melt on the
and there
railroad.
was the one snowflake that apparently the Eskimo woman... Because he says, an Inuit woman told me everything about snow.
Oh.
Eskimos.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would a train baby know Eskimo over Inuit?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the person who told him was like, we're not Eskimos.
Yes, but why would she care?
And
He says Inuit, and then to clarify, says Eskimo.
Well, for everybody else who doesn't know what an Inuit person is.
That is called talking down to your audience.
To be fair, though, a lot of people don't know what Inuit is.
So have them look it up.
Okay.
That's
Fair
like not adding more than 3 syllables in a YA book because, well, they don't know what the word means. Well, look the fuck up.
Okay,
if you're
yes,
watching
I
a
agree
science
with that.
fiction movie that purports to be intelligent, then you should be willing to do the research or the intellectual work to look into it.
Yeah. No, that I agree with. Yeah.
My biggest issue with the movie was the tone being ridiculously dark, but the storyline being ridiculously optimistic. The storyline was a beat per beat ripoff of YA post-apocalyptic. Chosen One. Loses wise mentor, load-bearing boss.
Yeah.
Load-bearing boss that is keeping the iniquity between the poor and the rich.
And the kid he almost ate, which became his friend.
There's the best friend there's the kid who dies. I forgot. Spoiler, that happens in almost every single YA, which surprisingly is extremely hopeful. It's about a hero overcoming the laziness of the upper class and the middle class not caring in order to get rid of the dictator who's responsible for the entire iniquity of everything, which is not how life works, to fix and then start off a brave new world. Mm-hmm. But the movie's tone throughout was people are going to die. Humanity sucks. You can't trust anybody. Everybody will basically go back to being sub-animalistic because most animals won't eat their own. Most animals. If you put a dead bear in front of a bear, it's not going to eat it.
Yes, it will.
Okay, I could be wrong. Either way, the movie basically tells you humanity is shit. Get over it. And then at the end is like, woohoo! Humanity's gonna live! Isn't that wonderful? And I'm like, if this is what survives, if that train... I was cheering for the train to fall off a cliff and explode. The people in that train are horrific monsters from the beginning to the end.
Yes,
and
I agree
it is
with that.
Not blamable, as the movie seems to think, on outside influences. You, in the end, have a responsibility to be moral on your own. It's not God.
No,
it's not Dictator Snow / Will.
I agree with that, but in desperate situations, in terrible times, good people do awful things.
Like a school teacher pulling out a semi-automatic to shoot at her kids?
Not at her kids.
Her kids were in the way.
Yeah, her kids were in the way, that's true.
That's what I'm saying. Everyone in that was despicable. There were no redeeming qualities in any of the characters.
See, that's not what I took from it.
Close redeeming was Chris Evans almost seeming to regret. But then you realize it's just hate for the top guy. There was no redeeming qualities in anyone except for Octavia. Spencer, I think her name is?
Yeah.
The mother.
They're in a lot of movies together, Chris Evans.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
she is a fantastic actress, and she played the role of a mother looking for her son without, randomly cutting off guys' balls for fun, which is something I have expected something to happen at some point.
To be fair, I would have done it. You take my kid,
I get wanting
hell
to,
and high water.
but in this movie, she would have done it to a minion who was not doing anything. Like, even the bad guys were comical. Bond called,
Yeah.
and they said, whoa, you're going a little too far.
Okay, so that's not what I took from it at all. What I took from this movie was that even the worst people can have redeemable qualities.
See, I saw no
Because
redeemable.
Chris Evans was the worst person before the story started. He was a horrific human being. And then at the end, he gave it all up and sacrificed himself to save worthier people. That's what I took from it.
And that's why I don't see it, because I don't see that arc at all.
Mm-hmm.
I see him as finally giving that last FU to the conductor. Ha! You think this guy's disposable? I'll protect them.
Oh, yeah, see? Yeah, no, that's not what I took from it at all.
Also, what happened with Andy? Like, what was that silver thing that he went
Yeah, I
sad
have no
and
idea what that was
disappeared, and I was
about.
like, oh.
I honestly, it could have been cut out of the movie.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that. The fish. That. The
I know, see-
superpowers of the girl.
See, I still like the fish
Couldn't you
because
just
it
have
was
made-
weird and dark and
I
But
literally...
it wasn't
echoing it, sort of skirting into Bizarro Land, which I really liked.
it wasn't bizarre enough to make it truly creepy.
It was when everybody started shouting Happy New Year halfway through the fight.
That was kind of creepy. That, I'll give it, was unnerving. Yeah. But the tone of creepiness, this movie would have been fantastic if they'd kept up that tone of Happy New Year in the middle of the fight throughout the whole thing. Go full Twin Peaks on this shit, and it would have been amazing.
Yeah, no.
See, I paused it with like 42 minutes left, went online, and literally said, like, everyone is dead except for 3 people, and there's still 40 minutes!
Yeah, I saw that post and I was like,
What else are they going to do?
yeah.
I think, though, that, like, my worst thing about it, or the thing I didn't like the most about it, is that I was like, okay, this is my favorite character. Dies. Okay, fine. This one's my favorite character. Dies. Okay, this one's my favorite. Like, I just don't
You
like
don't
it
watch
when all
Game
my
of Thrones, I
favorites-
take it?
No.
Okay.
But my favorite's still alive. So I just, I never liked that where it's like, okay, I'll get attached and then, and also, what was the guy with the knives with the tattoos was awesome.
Oh, wasn't he
And there
cool?
was no explanation about anything.
There was
I
no
wanna know
explanation for who he
more.
was, what really happened to him, why
The
did he not
movie was
fight more.
already 2 hours long.
It was,
Yeah, you know what? They could have cut out a whole section that was useless, or cut. It needed trimming, or explaining why were people randomly brainwashed.
Oh, the kids?
The kids, the food guy, a few of the others that we passed by, the violinist didn't even look at them.
Yeah.
Like, do they have some form of mental brainwashing? Is
Yeah,
it
it's entirely-
by controlling? Is that why the girl can see through walls? Or is
No,
it just
I think-
plot convenience for that last thing where they could have just had an open grate and have her see it because Chris Evans is a blind...
That's a technical term.
'Cause,
No,
like-
because honestly, there are, it's sort of the same as when you join a cult. When you leave a cult, oftentimes, most people have to be called what's debriefed, which is literally unbrainwashed.
But
So it's
cult
entirely-
brainwashing takes time. Not
Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah, that's true, but I can sort of see it as being sort of like a sort of breaking down of somebody and then just sort of building them back up.
I cannot believe that a child who is so willful he won't listen to anybody, including those who are like, will suddenly be willing 2 to 3 days later to sit in a hole and go, without talking, without moving, without trying to escape. That takes more than just, I'm not going to feed you, which he's kind of used to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true.
So
I imagine
there's a
that
lot of
something
little
was-
points in the movie that annoyed me because I was already annoyed with the dichotomy of, I'm so sad. Oh, look, hope.
But see, I like the I'm so sad. I like that nobody in this movie was shiny knight perfect.
Yes, Chris Evans was the
No,
entire
he
time.
wasn't!
He
wasn't though.
discussed in all the right places.
Abandoned Edgar.
Yeah,
That's very
it.
true.
The
You're
abandoned.
right.
That's when I was
Edgar.
like, no, I don't like you.
Yeah, right.
My
thing
favorite
is-
character.
He was. There was too much hope for it to be a proper wallow, and way too much wallow for it to be proper hope.
See, I disagree.
I think this movie would have been way better if they had gotten rid of all this, woo, we can survive with polar bears crap, and blew up the train at the end. I wanted Chris Evans to take that green wasabi crap, throw it into the engine, and have the whole thing explode. Because that humanity didn't deserve to survive.
And most of them didn't. 2 people.
Oh, I'm sure a lot more. That train was so over-engineered.
Yeah.
There are people who survived in there.
Yeah,
And they
there are
didn't
people
fall
who
far.
survived. They didn't fall far, but they were rolling the whole time. There's no way there's anybody crawling out of there without a broken neck.
Yeah,
I don't think they crawl with the broken.
Zombies.
which would have been an even cooler twist. I was kind of hoping for a classic Star Trek twist where Wilson didn't exist and it was a computer running the.
I did think that.
Oh yeah.
That Wilson
he
died
didn't
a long time.
fall?
Yeah. They hinted at it, and I was like, oh, he died. Okay, that makes sense. So it's a computer that's doing math that is basically telling them when to kill people.
It turns
That's
out
awesome.
Wilson's a sociopath.
Not even a really good one.
What? Is
He
there
was
a good
boring.
Yeah.
I want my villains that are over the top and mustache twirly, gambiting like crazy to be interesting. This guy was useless.
Sort of, yeah.
He was an amazing engineer, apparently, who has no idea how to take all the raw material from guns and smelt it
Oh yeah.
into a working part.
Yeah, that's the other thing that bothered me was, so they're using children because they fit into these places to replace the parts that are no longer working.
But they mentioned they have smelters.
But where's the forge on the train?
Yeah, they mentioned that they have places to do that. And also 17 years? If you're building an ark for humanity, 17 years and major parts are breaking down?
Yeah, but it's
And
17
you don't
years.
have spares?
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say, but it's 17 years of continual use, non-stop, through very punishing temperatures.
Absolutely, but an engineer would know to be able to have the stuff to at least manufacture something new.
Fair
So-
enough. I agree. Although, I didn't really think about it, because in my head, it was like, shit, they're spraying this stuff. I have this luxury train thing. I need to quickly adapt this to everything that's going to happen. There's no time. Everybody get on!
Maybe it's because it's the propaganda where they make him look like a god.
Yeah.
But in the kids section, they make it look like he had planned in advance. He had over-engineered the train, and everyone...
No, everybody was laughing at him for over-engineering the train because they're like, it's not the end of the world. Like, what are you going to need all this
But
stuff
it feels
for?
like he was planning for the end of the world. Or specifically this kind of end of the world. Or else he really revamped it, like, at the last second to
because
take
it
in
was-
the snow.
Yeah, but it was supposed to run sort of all the way around the world, so it would be taking in the snow where there is snow, and then just
An
recycling
audience,
it,
I am
suppose.
purposely ignoring the ridiculous concept because it is a concept. The idea is kind of cool. It's scientifically unsound in every way possible.
A lot of science fiction is until it isn't.
But it's just, if you think about all the cliffs and like rickety rails that they had, one good freeze and
Or an avalanche.
an avalanche, so many things. They never talk about an advance team, which would make sense.
Yeah.
That they have a little shuttle that comes out the front to go and be like, shit, the rail's broken, let's fix it.
Yeah.
That would make sense. You know what would also make sense? A fallout shelter! 30 levels underground!
See, this is why I think that more humanity
Humanity
survived.
Oh yeah, then them?
Then them.
I hope they all died, except for the 2 that survived.
Yes, so do I.
And even then,
Because they were awful.
the hedonistic, totally apathetic psychic girl and the brainwashed child who just lost everybody he knows. This is going to make for an interesting society.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll mate with the polar bears and be better. Yes, I have more respect for polar bears than any character in this movie. And polar bears are dicks.
Okay, so after Eric's rant, we're out of time.
Sorry. Lindsay, did you want to say anything else?
I was going to say, Lindsay, what would you like to say or add?
Well, I don't know. I just, I didn't analyze it that much.
Yeah.
I was mostly like, wow, that was really sad and depressing. Okay, I'm now gonna watch 2 episodes of Voltron
to cheer myself
up. I didn't really go into it thinking like that I desperately wanted to see this movie. I'd looked it up beforehand. I thought the premise looked interesting, but then I looked up like, why is it rated R? Oh my gosh, all these terrible, awful things happen.
It was rated R?
Yeah.
Huh.
Or like 14A. It was pretty high up there. Well, I mean, the frozen guy's arm, that scene alone would probably up it. Anyways, but
Batman vs Superman was rated below than that, and I think there was gorier parts, so
Meh.
nah.
Rated R for child labor.
Yeah.
Rated R for cannibalism.
That was
for enjoying cannibalism.
That was another thing that was added into the things. Anyway, so I went in with like not high hopes and didn't want to watch it, and came out of it being like, yep, that's exactly what I didn't want to watch. So yeah.
I appreciate you watching it for this panel though.
Ruined my day.
Eric, last words?
I had heard about this movie, and I'd heard about the premise, and I thought it was a really cool idea. I love trains. Trains are cool. I have run complete D&D games on a train for fun. But it did not live up to the hype, the ratings that critics have given it. It was derivative, had hanging plot lines, and no interesting characters. Its only redeeming quality was the great acting. And even that was limited by the terrible writing.
In contrast, this is my second viewing of the movie. I loved it the first time I watched it. I loved it the second time I watched it. Some of the writing, yes, was subpar, but it was beautifully filmed, wonderfully choreographed, excellently acted, and I found the characters interesting precisely because they were so flawed. And
that was
really
just the writing. Sorry.
That was just the writing. They were so flawed and really genuinely horrific people down to the last one, except for the children because, you know, they're not fully formed yet. But
Just wait.
Yeah, down to the last one. But it still said that you can be redeemed. Like, there is possibility. You can cross that line, but you can come back. And I really enjoyed that about the movie.
But only by killing yourself.
I
Because
mean,
that's the best self-sacrifice you can do. Not actually work to make a better world.
would you want a baby eater around when you're trying to build a new civilization? Let's be honest.
True.
Star rating?
Minus 14 out of 5 for me.
Eric?
I'm going to give it a 2.
Oh,
which
wow.
is generous. But if I had to choose between this and the last panel I was on, I would choose the last one I was on, which was the really dumb science-y one. Upside Down.
Upside Down. Really?
Yeah.
Oh my, I thought this was miles better than Upside Down.
Better visuals in Upside Down, and the premise was a little bit better scripted.
No, anyway, point is, I quite enjoyed this movie, so I am giving it a 5. As far as post-apocalyptic movies go, this is the top of my list for post-apocalyptic. Like Pan's Labyrinth is the top of my list for fantasy, and
But Pan's Labyrinth is genius.
Pan's Labyrinth is genius, and what was it? Chronicles of Riddick is the top of grimdark science fiction opera. Science fiction opera?
Space opera?
Space opera. Thank you. That's the one I was looking for. So yeah, that's what we've got. If you have any thoughts about Snowpiercer, leave them in the comments down below, or in our Goodreads group. Oh, we have to pick a new one. Lindsay, you get to.
And it is Guardians of the Galaxy 2014.
Yay! Something fun and silly.
With actual character arcs and witty writing.
I will fight you. Okay.
I will lose.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Do subscribe and hit the thumbs up. Give us a like.
Oh yeah, that too.
Share with your friends.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a guy ranting, right?
Bye.
Bye. That's hilarious.
That's how I learned.